Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing the curvature node and how to get better control of the radius. So in this example, we've got this weathering, and then what you'll see is there's some small rust taken out of the metal. So that's what we're going to be doing today, but the main focus of this tutorial is getting control of the radius using a shader. Okay, so let's dive in. So what I've done here is I've rearranged something. Here's my attributes panel, my objects panel, and then I've docked to it the node editor so I get some space to show you guys. It's kind of moved around a little funky, but we'll deal with it. Here is the shader we're going to be recreating, and this is basically the focus of this tutorial, basically just showing the curvature node. So this is the heart of this setup. It's basically a max on noise. It's being augmented using the change range, and then it's driving the radius of the curvature node. So I've seen this process of removing corners and things like that on objects. I normally see it using a curvature node, and then they use blending modes to take away at the radius and remove parts of it to give that weathered look. And I believe that this way gives you better results. Now there might be even a better one, but as of now, this system seems to be the best that I was able to come up with. So this is the one we're going to be working with. This is the one that we had demo started with. So I'm going to right click, go select materials and tags, and then drag in this new demo material into the link. You can see we've got 4 elements selected, and here we go. So we're starting from scratch. So the first thing I do is I like to turn down the weight of the reflection so it's quicker to render in the viewport, because we don't really need to see reflections. I'm going to move this standard material up here. I've named it base. Make a duplicate of it by just control dragging or command dragging on a Mac, and we'll call this one rust. I'll give it a tan color, something like this. So next we want to blend these two. So what we'll do is we'll go in here to our texture material blender. Now this material blender, you can see we have some slots that we can add multiple textures to, and that's what I used in the demo example. I had a base material, the oxidized painted metal, then I added a weathering, and then I added the smaller rust particles on the corners using this slot. So what we'll do, we'll move this over a little bit, and we'll take our blend here, drag it into the base, add the surface, and then our rust goes in the material color. So to get this to work, we need to add to the blend, which if I select this is a black and white image that drives the transparency of this material. So I'll start off with going to texture and adding our curvature. And with our curvature, we're just going to drag it into the blend color here, fire up the IPR renderer. And you can see it's already working. Bring it up close. So what I'll do is I'll solo it by clicking the little circle S, and you can see we need more contrast in this material. So what we'll do, we'll go to the remap of our curvature, and I'm just going to start off with setting this to something like 3%. And the problem with doing just that is you can see it reintroduced some gray values, and we just want black and white, have the gray values in the middle part showing up some of that gold. So next what we'll do then is to adjust this, we're going to mess with the bias. If I move it this way, it's biased towards white. If I go this way, it darkens it. So I'll set it to, I like even numbers, 25, so 0.25, and there we go. And these numbers can be adjusted as you see fit. So I'll set this to 1, and you'll see it gets much bigger. So depending on the size of your scene, your product will be slightly different. You can see we get nice, tight, setting it to 2.5. I'm going to put it back to its default. And what's going to happen is we're going to use the texture, black and white, max on noise, to drive the width of this dynamically, okay? So let's see how that works. So to do that, we're gonna bring up our noise here. So we'll go and type in noise. Here's our noise, and we'll start off with some space. So we'll move this over, and we'll plug in our noise into the curvature. And a quick tip to get I could drag this in and find it in here. I find it's easier just to come in here to the dot that you wanna plug in and click. It brings up the radius value, and we can then just plug it in. Now, not much has changed. You might see some adjustment. What's happening is black values are set to 0. White values are numerically set to 1. So what happens is our curvature radius is actually set to 0 and 1, which is too high. We want to set it to 0.5. So to fix this issue, we can remap it. We're going to use a change range, and make sure you don't use the color change range. You want to use the float value change range, and we'll just drag it right on this line and it plugs it in. And what this does is this will remap the 0 and 1's different values. So Right now it's set to 1. If I wanted to match the original value, which was 0.05, I plug it into the new max range. We get that same width with the disruptions. So what I want to do is I want to change this new max range to a slider value. So I'll go ahead and add a value node. This makes it much easier to edit later. We don't need to see the preview, and I'll plug it into the new max range. I also like coloring these red, so I know which ones are changeable, common changing, and I'll unsolo, and we'll set this value to 0.5. Now, to get this to be more distorted, you'll notice the noise, if I solo it, is really, really small. And that has to do with my scene scale. It's not real world units. Just crank up this overall scale. Let's go to something like 12. Now, if I unsolo this, you'll notice it's going to be wavy, and that's because the noise is very simple. Blistered turbulence, I find this one looks pretty nice for general. I'm also going to pump up the contrast a little bit, something like 0.5. Okay, so you can see we get some nice results here. So now we have a slider that can adjust these values. So what's actually happening here is areas that are white are expanding out and blacker areas are coming in tighter. So it's actually dynamically scaling that width, which gives you a really nice effect at larger ranges. So you can see you get this kind of bleeding effect where it appears as though it's like water damage. And of course, changing the noise types will give you completely different results. Like this gives you kind of like chip effect. So I just wanted to show you that you can control curvature using the max on noise to get variable widths of your curvature node. Also, don't forget that you'll need to remap it using the change range because these values will not be adjustable on the width. Your max width will not be adjustable unless you use a change range. The other thing too is in the noise, if you want to remove some of these, what you can do is you can just move the low clip and you can see we're removing less. So something like this will look nice for chips and things like that. So you can see we got like little chips taken out of it. And then you could stack a weathered material where it has a wider net around the edges and then stack like 3 of these or 4 of these if you want. You can get pretty creative with it and each one gets smaller and smaller radius. That's what I did in my example. So this material blender allows up to 6 channels, essentially do 6 layers of edge control. We'll go back here to our camera and you can see we got nice little sci-fi tech edges. So that is all I wanted to show with you. It was a quick video and I hope you got a lot out of this. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on more content. Thanks for your support.